Melan-In-White coats.
Welcome to Melan-In-White coats. We out here. We got Dr. Hayes, special guest. This is student Dr. Aldwin. This is going to be a blessed episode. Like, this is such a unique transitionatory position that we in. Like, I'm like nervous. Like LeVar said, I'm a little nervous. Like, he got levels on this.
I love
Like, it's crazy, like how we have a potential lieutenant governor in the building for Georgia, and we would love to enlighten the audience and the family about his prospects and his positioning and his campaign and what's going to be going down in the near future as we approach these midterm elections. So shout out to Dr. Hayes. LeVar, put on for us. There you go. There you go. We got to do it this episode. Right.
You know how it is, man.
Dr. Hayes, I'll let you introduce.
Welcome, Dr. Hayes. Welcome,
Yes.
Dr. Hayes. I'm glad to have you on here. As I stated before, we typically don't get shuffled or ruffled. Actually, see, I'm already ruffled by guests, but
Like the chips.
It's really an honor to have you on the podcast here today. So thank you for
Absolutely.
coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate you inviting me. I'm definitely honored and excited. Anytime I get an opportunity to come on a podcast, it's great. I love talking and love meeting people. So it's a pleasure to meet the both of you.
Thank you. We are blessed to meet you as well.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Hayes, give us a little bio about yourself and who is Dr. Hayes?
Absolutely.
Those that don't know, but will know.
Absolutely. My name is Dr. Jason Hayes, Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor right here in the great state of Georgia. So typically what I tell people is that, I'm from Louisiana. I grew up there. Originally, my family was in New Jersey. They moved there, mother and father, and then came back to Louisiana. Grew up in Louisiana and had a great family. Everyone was really close-knit. Mother and father did divorce early in my life, but we were able to make it through. Single parent home, mother's a nurse. She was pretty much the rock of our family. And, as a young person, I was always curious. Okay, where is she going to wearing this white uniform? So I would always tell people that she's the reason why I became a doctor, but also not just that, but she cared for a lot of our family members who were ill. We speak frequently a lot about my brother who actually has epilepsy, and I have an uncle who actually had Down syndrome. So always she was being their patient advocate. So that service, in my opinion, is something that actually pushed me towards being a physician. Her employer was an internist and also a general surgeon. So I was pretty blessed to actually be able to shadow him and get experiences seeing how a Black doctor actually is in not only his own office, but also in the hospital, and actually learned a bit of medicine too as well. I tell people anytime you have an opportunity to shadow a physician, you can actually learn a lot, and those what you learn actually helps you moving forward, going into medical school and even in practice. But even another thing that actually occurred with me was that I was able to get an experience with something called Boy State. And Boy State is a program, Boy State and Girl State is a program that was sponsored by American Legion, where they get young high school students involved in politics. So I actually had an opportunity to learn about city, also county or parish politics and state politics in Louisiana. So that was my first experience at politics. And then moving forward, graduated top of my class from Opelousas High School, went to Xavier University in New Orleans, graduated from there. That's right, HBCU. Graduated from there, went to Meharry Medical College in Nashville, where I actually not only got a medical degree, but also got a master's in public health. And also with that was able to learn about population health and Medicaid and Medicare programs. And also I was able to supplement that with an internship at the Centers for Disease Control, epidemiology internship with Health Professions Minority Foundation, and also, Minority Health Professions Foundation. And then also I was able to do a congressional internship with Congressman Jim Cooper in Nashville. And that is where I learned that actually as a physician, you can actually help people beyond the hospital walls. Sure. So that actually told me, I said, well, you know what, I could be a politician, and not just a politician, but a public servant where I can help people. So moving forward, graduated from there in 2004, went to Baylor College of Medicine in Houston, where I got some excellent training in the Texas Medical Center with Baylor College of Medicine. So finished there, became board certified in internal medicine, and actually did from there in 2007 to 2011, I had a 4-year commitment with the National Health Service Corps. And if you're familiar with that program, it was started in the 70s, where we get physicians to underserved communities. So I was able to work in Jackson, Tennessee, Memphis, and also Nashville. So I was able to work in rural, working class communities, and also able to work in urban communities. And from there, I was actually able to get a lot of great experiences taking care of patients. I also had experience as a medical director in a federally qualified health center in Memphis. So got some experience there, and even did some policy work in the state level. So was able to get a wide range of experiences. And when I finished that program in 2011, was a locums doctor, did some travel work, and then came to the Atlanta area in 2014, where I was recruited by a local hospital system. I worked there for a few years and then decided to go back and get a physician executive MBA at the University of Tennessee. That where I was able to get experiences learning about financial statements, budgeting, how to do a business plan, learn about organizational management. So it was a great experience. And from there, I actually started my own medical practice, Personal Concierge MD, in Alpharetta, Georgia. And it's a great experience being a small business owner. And in 2020, decided to run for office, ended up running for state representative in House District 49. And if anyone's familiar with Alpharetta and that House district, it's a very Republican district. So as a first-time candidate, I actually ended up winning my Democratic nomination with 54% of the vote. And then in the general election, I ran against a long-time Republican who had been there for 20 years and almost got the seat flipped. But as a first-time candidate, got 47.2% of the vote, which was the best that any Democrat had done. That's right. Best that any Democrat had done in over 20, 30 years. And then on top of that, that's right. Absolutely. So, I tell people that showed that not only I was a great candidate for Democrats, but also a candidate that Republicans respect. And I think a lot of that respect came from being a medical doctor, but also a small business owner. So it shows that not only I'm a candidate that Democrats can respect, but also a candidate that Republicans can respect as well. So now running for lieutenant governor, we have a huge field, but I feel as if that we are getting a lot of momentum. We're raising money and people like the platform that we're pushing. Medicaid expansion. We're also pushing to make sure education changes so teachers can get better pay. And also we can make sure the curriculum is better so students can learn about trade opportunities and personal finance and small business ownership. So if you don't want to go to college, you have an opportunity to give back to your community and also give to society, and also pushing economic growth, small business ownership, also making sure that we can work with corporations so they can come in communities and focus on job training, community hiring, things that's important to improve communities. And finally, last piece, got to make sure that voting is protected, access is protected, and also we make sure that we get rid of SB 202, which is the voter suppression law that we have. Right. So we need everyone on the same page, pushing and fighting. And you know what I'm here? We need more doctors. We need people that understand what's going on in healthcare, and so that we can actually do some good for people.
That's it. And let me just say, I have to commend you. You have done so many things with your life, and you're still a young gentleman. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So you've done so much with your life that really all of the things that you've accomplished thus far people can say, well, I haven't even done that in several lifetimes, or you've done enough to accomplish in several lifetimes, not just one. So I gotta give you a round of applause. I love to see it. Especially the almost win, and this time I know that you'll win this one. I can just feel it, I pray and I hope that you do.
Yes, sir.
But just getting into questions, I did want to ask you. So and you did mention you touched on some of these points. Just tell us about your journey into politics by itself. Like what inspired you to run for lieutenant governor of Georgia, even the circumstances of you not necessarily winning that chair in Alpharetta in that district.
I mentioned the experience with Boy State, American Legion, but I have to take it back further. Again, family, making sure that my mother, again, she's always been someone that's been a leader of our family and looking out for the best interest of people. So in my mind, becoming a physician wasn't just being a doctor, but it was helping. So that has always been a theme for me, even running for office, is that we need good people who can run for office, who actually want to help people. So this is greater than just running as a Democrat or greater than running as a Republican or Libertarian. And for me, it's simple. See the fighting between all of the parties. And I said, hey, we got to get everyone on the same page. So looking back at that experience I had with Boise State, I actually won a seat there in the universe that we created. Actually was a state rep there. And I remember running for the position, and it wasn't something that, I had any thought to. I just did it. And even to this day, I'm like, well, why did I do this? And I remember giving a speech in caucus. And I mean, I gave this impromptu speech, which was amazing. And, if anyone knows anything about these programs in Boys State, Girls State, there aren't a lot of minorities there. The majority of people out there are Caucasian, they're male, they're, Caucasian females on the Girls State side. So I was able to give a impromptu, passionate speech about unity with people that didn't look like me. And so I got a standing ovation, and I won this particular seat with a landslide. So for me, it was, okay, I did this, but where did it come from? And I thank my ancestors for putting me here on this earth, because I feel like my ancestors, my God, have actually put me here to do this, and not for me, but for people. And then even moving forward, going to Xavier University, Meharry Medical College. The Meharry Medical College experience was interesting because the Master's in Public Health was something that one of our late dean had an idea to do to get students in a dual degree program. So the late Dr. Pamela Williams, who was a great mentor for a lot of us. So while we were doing this, there was a few of us that were doing this medical degree, Master's in Public Health. So I remember being on my surgical rotation, one of my surgical attendants, matter of fact, he was the chair. He said, "Oh, you're doing a Master's in Public Health." He said, "You want to do a congressional internship?" I said, "Well, sure." And he was a donor to Congressman Jim Cooper. And I mean, that experience was great because I was able to see the inner workings of a congressional person's office, and then able to see how the office was able actually to help people. And I said, well, wow, man, this is amazing. And I actually had an opportunity to meet the congressperson. And I did some grunt work as well when I was there being an intern, but I was able to work on an editorial about increasing congressional support for cancer research. So that was my first experience at learning about political communications and how when we communicate with the general public, we have to make sure it's in a manner that people understand at their level. So just much as being a physician, you have to be able to meet your patients and where they can understand, but also doing it from a level of respect. So that's what I learned from that, and also helping people. And then even moving forward with the National Health Service Corps. I mean, to be able to work with people and do a great job as a young physician, with highly trained physician was great. Even the government did a great job with working with many of us. Whenever you go into the program, they teach us about cultural competency. So even kind of looking back at Meharry Medical College, where they teach us about healthcare disparities, I thought it was a great way to go into this program and learn about, again, cultural competency and make sure we eliminate healthcare disparities. So I was really excited to have an opportunity to do that. And then even with American College of Physicians, I don't know if you guys are aware, but as an internist, we're the second largest physician-led organization. So I actually was able to become a fellow of the American College of Physicians. And a lot of that was because I did a lot of advocacy work with them. Went to Washington. We advocated on behalf of patients. And this was early in my career. So we were able to work on the Medicare issue. At the time, about 10 years ago, Medicare had reimbursement cuts. So we were at a risk of having a lot of physicians not accepting Medicare. So a lot of us were able to go up there, we're able to, talk with U.S. senators or U.S. congresspersons to say, hey, you guys need to scrap this sustained growth rate. I don't know if you guys remember this company called SGR, which was actually hurting or harming physicians' ability to get Medicare reimbursement rates. So we got that eliminated. And now we have a new program that's in place that's been there for several years, where physicians can get paid for doing telephone visits or telehealth visits. And so it was a great way to actually help patients, but also help doctors who care for the patients who need it the most. And then I was also even able to do some work on the state health level, state policy level with the state of Tennessee, where I worked with something called adult oral health care, where physicians, also dentists, and all of the stakeholders were able to get in there and give a report to the state legislature on how we need to have better oral health. You're aware oral health is important. It impacts emergency room visits. And also looking at things like diabetes. We got to get that under control because that affects oral health, where patients can get bacterial infections. So being a health care policy advocate at that time also helped myself as far as running for office. So that gave me a lot of different experiences that maybe other political figures don't have. So, running for office again back in 2020 during the height of the COVID pandemic, being a physician, working in primary care, being a small business owner was a unique perspective that I think a lot of people actually appreciated. So same thing that we're doing here running for lieutenant governor, different perspective, You have a candidate that's knowledgeable, candidate that actually has experience running, a candidate that's actually worked on the policy level, which is very different than other political candidates who were maybe recruited and maybe their background was just in the nonprofit space, or maybe their background was just being in politics. And I feel like right now we need better candidates. We need candidates that actually can come in and actually can push positive agendas and keep people in mind. We can't just be focused on just your party. You got to be focused on people. So we got to be in a position to unify, and that's what I'm looking to do.
Dr. Hayes, I relate to you in so many different ways. My mom's a nurse, has been one of my fervent supporters and inspirations into going to medicine, going to the nursing homes and sitting with her and seeing how compassionate she was with her patients and kind of relating to your encouragement through that process, but also having the opportunity to attend the HBCU medical school at Morehouse School of Medicine, where I did my master's degrees. And then now what we relate to is both being Georgians, although, I claim New York too. I'm a New Yorker too.
It's okay. I got some New Jersey in me.
Right. South Jersey. I saw.
Yeah.
With that being said, what are some of the most critical issues that are affecting Georgians now as we approach this election year? I mean, there's so many things with the social political landscape. Obviously we have war going on in Ukraine. We were worried about, and we'll talk a little bit about the student debt. We're worried about the inflation rates are significantly high. Many people are having challenges paying daily needs, food, juice, like things that we used to take for granted. And so what are some of the things that you personally want to target and impact in a positive way for Georgians?
Absolutely. Well, it's a multifaceted question, and naturally, as a physician, I'm going to push the healthcare agenda. Right. Georgia's ranked 43rd in the country in healthcare, and one of the things that befuddles me is that we have several counties in the south of Georgia that don't even have obstetrics, gynecology, pediatrics, internal medicine, and that's something that shouldn't be. In 2022, especially mentioning that I've worked with the National Health Service Corps. We have federal funding that's earmarked with it, and it's called Public Health Service Grant Section 330. These dollars have been earmarked for any community that we deem medically underserved or HPSA, health professional shortage areas. Those dollars are earmarked. So it's just a matter of the political leaders in those communities working with the communities to get a board together, to find land, put together a business plan, applying for these grant dollars. We can get this done. And with these federally qualified health centers, we can recruit doctors there, good doctors fresh out of residency who want to do a great thing to help patients. So for me, that's something that I would be pushing aggressively along with Medicaid expansion. And when I tell people with Medicaid expansion, I mean, we have 400 to 500,000 Georgians who have access to health insurance. And, we like to define what Medicaid is. And we tell people, Medicaid, to get Medicaid to qualify, you have to be 200% below the federal poverty level. And then to get Medicare, you have to be either disabled or be 65 and older. So again, we have people in the Medigap range who don't qualify. So Medicaid expansion, which is a part of Healthcare Affordability Act, or Obamacare, would actually help people get this affordable health insurance. And then also making sure that we can recruit doctors, keep doctors on board with accepting Medicaid, and also working with healthcare systems who have the ability to take on the new load of patients. And you couple that along with bringing in federally qualified health centers to recruit more doctors, we can close this healthcare gap. And then also, if you look at the numbers, the Georgia Bureau of Policy Institute talks about how Medicaid expansion can actually bring in dollars. And we talk about this matching federal dollars from the government. So we're talking about billions of dollars that can actually help critical access hospitals. And these are hospitals that are in rural areas where when patients get sick, they can go there. They're having a heart attack. They can actually treat and or transport the patient via helicopter to a larger institution, whether it's in Augusta or Atlanta or Columbus. So a lot of these hospitals have been closing because of COVID. COVID has actually put a strain on our healthcare system. So Medicaid expansion would actually help keep these hospitals open. Hopefully those that have closed, we can actually try to reopen them. So that would be help, in my opinion, for Georgians. But the second issue that we have to be concerned about is obviously the economy. Inflation is going up, and then war is not helping, obviously, when you're dealing with the scarcity if you're talking about oil. So it's hurting a lot of us with gas. And also, you mentioned this milk, juice, those things are going up. So we have to be in a position whenever we're looking to try to improve the economy So when we talk about the economy, we have to make sure that jobs are available for people. Now,
Mhm.
I will give Georgia some credit. Our unemployment rate is low. It's about 3.2%. But we have to look at that in terms of a breakdown. How much of that is towards communities that are underserved? Black communities, Latino communities, poor white. So we need those numbers. We need to look at that as well. And also to help alleviate the issues in our communities, we need to make sure that we talk to corporations and work with them to have community hiring and also community job training so we can improve our communities. People can have access to jobs. Young people during the summer and even after school can have access to jobs so they don't have to succumb to what's going on in the streets. And then also even from an education standpoint, making sure that we're teaching small business ownership, personal finance in our schools, trade skills opportunities for people so young people can actually utilize this. But even pushing further, voter access, voter protections, must make sure that's protected. And also gerrymandering, which is a huge issue. I'm sure you guys have seen Republicans have effectively, they have changed districting. Mm-hmm. So even right now we have Congressional District 6. We had a really, really great congressional person, Lucy McBath, who's now pretty much been gerrymandered out of her district. So now she's competing with another Democrat, Carolyn Bordeaux. So that hurts us whenever we're in these situations. And for me personally, what I don't like about it is that when the Democratic Party is performing and doing well, the Republican Party, instead of competing, they change the rules. So that for me is an issue. And I think that's something that needs to be addressed more on a federal level where we can make sure that gerrymandering is eliminated. So if you was to ask me what's the most important thing, I would say gerrymandering and obviously helping to make sure inflation is reduced and that people have access to jobs and that we aren't being injured or harmed by what's going on with the economy.
Awesome. I just want to highlight just for a second again, you said it was HIPSA, those earmarked dollars. So I just want to highlight that one more time because a lot of times I hear Republicans or people who or align themselves with the Republican Party talk about the pitfalls of expanded Medicaid. Yeah. And I just want to highlight for a second again that there are dollars set aside for, increasing access to health care.
Absolutely.
And, the dollars can be matched with federal dollars again. And so this is not something that's going to increase the debt by some crazy amount. No. It's not good. So I just wanted to highlight that again because some people, they don't know. You can't help what you don't know. You don't
That's
know.
Right. That's it.
You can't help it. But now you know.
Now you know.
Right.
Medicaid expansion. And the thing is, Medicaid as a whole, you do bring in matching federal funds, but this expansion will bring more federal funds. And then you have the issue with health profession shortage areas. You got federal funds there. So, people, there are a lot of small business owners that can't even afford insurance and they can't afford to have insurance for their employees. So this is an excellent way to help small business owners. It's an excellent way to help their employees. And that actually helps the economy as well. So we have to get people on the same page and we have to let Republicans know, don't vote against Medicaid expansion because you're trying to hurt President Obama's legacy. Exactly. We need you to vote for Medicaid expansion. That's right. You have to vote for Medicaid expansion to help your constituents. And that's what it needs to come down.
And I totally agree. I totally agree. So thank you for mentioning that too. For people who don't know where the money comes from.
That's right.
It's not like we're taking money straight out of your mouth or your children's mouth and and funding people. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Voter suppression was a huge issue when we talk about in the last elections for governor in Georgia and in general for the presidential elections as well. And you mentioned the SB 202 attempted to be passed and whatnot and how it's affecting a lot of Georgians. What are your thoughts on the voter suppression that's going on and how do you feel you will be able to combat that in your respective campaign?
Absolutely. Well, looking at the race in 2018, current Governor Kemp was Secretary of State. There is no way that he should have retained that title of Secretary of State and run for governor. And there are tons of reports. You can't make this stuff up. Tons of reports that people were purged from the voter roll, and it directly affected the Democratic nominee at the time, who was Stacey Abrams. So that in itself was a conflict of interest. And any Republican who says otherwise, cognitive dissonance, or any person that says that. So I think we have to give credit to Fair Fight, an organization started by Stacey Abrams, to look at that and evaluate that and examine that. And in addition, the other concern with the SB 202 bill or law that's in place, they have stronger voter ID laws. And when you talk to a lot of Republicans, their concern is always, well, there are illegal aliens that are voting. I'm saying, well, listen, people that want to, there are a lot of people that come here to America who want to be citizens, and they know fully well if they break the law, they can't become a citizen. So why would someone show up to vote knowing that they're going to ask for ID and they're going to check them out to see who they are? And then on top of that, they're at risk of being arrested by ICE and being detained. So why would an immigrant do that? It doesn't make sense. So I tell a lot of Republicans to use that. I said, that's a very weak argument, number one. And I said, number two, same way here in Georgia and Texas, where you say it's your constitutional right to carry your gun without a permit. Well, guess what? For those of us who are Americans who have the right to vote, we should be able to vote without an ID as well. So that's the logic that I'm using with them. But even, with the voter ID, when you go in and if your ID, the address on your ID doesn't match the voter roll, you can't vote that day. And it's very difficult to get these things changed. So, again, pushing to eliminate the voter ID, but in the event we still can't do that, we should be able to sign up to vote or have your voter information changed immediately that same day. So same day voter registration, ballot boxes, that has to be there. My current Republican opponent, Butch Miller, wants to get rid of it. Now, when you ask him why, he says, well, people are cheating. I said, well, look, people that have immune deficiencies, people, whether if it's from HIV, there are chemotherapeutic agents, or maybe it's some other situation that occurs, those ballot boxes are important to them. They don't have to stand in line. They don't have to be exposed to the elements. So those ballot boxes are important. And then on top of that, when you're dealing with the mail system, it can be notoriously slow. But if you have a president like President Trump, former President Trump, who installs their friends to slow down the system even more, those ballot boxes become important. Now, if you want to have it under 24/7 supervision, that's great. I have zero problems with that. But that SB 202 law should be revoked. We need to get it removed to make sure that we have better voter access. And one thing that I also want to bring up is that we have to also look at the historical context of voter suppression. We mention Jim Crow all the time, and there's some people who don't know what that is. Some young people, some older people. This is why things like critical race theory becomes important. We have to teach about the system that we're living in here in America, that the system can be racist. The system can be full of inequities that can hurt marginalized people. And we tell people, now, if you're a part of the majority, whether if you're Caucasian or whether if you're in a higher socioeconomic status, we're not calling you racist, but you need to admit that the system can be racist and full of inequities. So case in point, I tell people, let's go back to slavery, right after the Emancipation Proclamation, right after Juneteenth, 1865. We had a lot of Black colleges. We had a lot of Black representation, senators, representatives. We had a lot of Black towns and cities that were doing well, like Oscarville, that's currently underneath Lake Lanier. So if you look at the history of that, actually, a lot of that was a lot of jealousy from white people in that area. And a lot of their concerns were voting. There are tons of laws that were created called Black codes, grandfather clauses. For example, if your grandfather couldn't vote, you can't vote. If your grandfather didn't own property, you couldn't own property. Those laws are not only prevalent in Georgia, but they're prevalent in Louisiana, Texas, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi. Those laws were created to suppress your right to vote, but also to suppress your right at economic prosperity. So when people talk about, well, why are Black people here in this country in the condition we're in, it's because of those laws. So we have a certain sect of people here in this country that don't want to learn this because it's going to make their children feel bad or make them feel bad. No one's trying to make your children feel bad or make you feel bad, but we have to study human behavior. We have to study what happened in the late 1800s that pushed us into a Jim Crow era where segregation was allowed. And when we study this, we study human behavior so we don't repeat it again. Same thing when we push forward from even after integration, when we had in many of our Black communities, there was a war in the Black communities where there was environmental injustices attacked. When you look at these interstate systems going through the Black community, they separated the Black communities. When you look at how heroin and crack cocaine was introduced in our communities, guns being dropped off in our communities, those guns didn't get there by accident. So
Exactly.
Ronald Reagan, hello.
Absolutely. Ronald Reagan was an interesting character. So, and I call him a character because he was a movie person. He was a movie actor. So he was a character, played president. Right. So, I mean, they pushed a lot of those Reaganomics on us. Exactly. It hurt us in a lot of our communities, and a lot of us hurt ourselves too. So we have an uphill battle when we're dealing with just voter suppression and how we are as a people right now here in this country. So we're talking about generational poverty. And so we're now trying to undo a lot of this. And a lot of us running for office, I think, is important, making sure that we change a lot of this, pushing for critical race theory to being taught, and making sure we protect voter access. So it's critical. And there are people behind the scenes that knows that. We need more of us running for office, making sure that we cultivate leadership from our community, support them so we can get good people in office who can help marginalized people, but all people as well.
Right. I like that. The thing about it is, if you are going to take out every piece of hurtful history that any country has, and you run into the risk of, like you said, the history repeating itself. If you, and this is just my personal feelings on the matter, but if you're going to take out all of the things that are the causes of civil war and stuff like that, you have to take out the things that started World War II and all of that history as well. Then it's not fair, right?
That's right.
People did hurtful things to other people during these times, and it's very important that we don't repeat that kind of history and that we stay on it and making sure that those pieces of history stay in there, and that people are, even though it's hurtful, we still have to learn about those pieces of history. And I like what you said in regards to the reasons why Jim Crow laws came about and why Black people felt the need to have things that were their own cities, their own businesses, their own colleges. And you are a graduate of HBCU. And so I want to ask you, what do you think, or what you feel is the importance of supporting HBCUs?
Yes.
If you could just talk to us a little about your experience in an HBCU, as a student and a graduate.
Absolutely.
That would be helpful to me.
Historically, Black colleges, I don't know if people are aware, but obviously started in the 1800s. I mean, they're all over the Southeast. And I'll say this, my grandparents actually went to one of the first HBCUs in the state of Louisiana's Leland College. Initially it was in New Orleans, and then it went to Baker. So they actually met there at that college. So I have some historical context. We have family members going to Southern University in Baton Rouge. So going to HBCUs are just tremendous because it's a great opportunity for many of us to get higher education, but also an opportunity to learn about ourselves and actually to evolve. Mm-hmm. We can learn more about history and also improving our communities. And if you look at histories in the 60s, the 50s and the 60s, historically Black colleges were places where we had our revolutionaries come from and places where we can go. Like, for example, Fisk University, many students came from Fisk in Nashville, led many a sit-in. So even now, back in 2020, we had issues with George Floyd issue, Black Lives Matter. A lot of students came from our HBCU. So they're places, in my opinion, where we can get a wealth of knowledge, experience, and also feel welcome. And I think we have to continue to support HBCUs, keep them alive and going, and also support them. But also we have to make sure that they get the dollars that are owed to them. For example, in the state of Tennessee State, which was down the street from Meharry Medical College, were owed millions and millions of dollars by the state of Tennessee. They actually withheld a lot of the funding. And I bet if we look at the books at every state, the Department of Education, many of our HBCUs were probably being withheld a lot of the dollars that they were supposed to be given. Because many HBCUs, some of them that aren't private, are land grant institutions. So they're supposed to get certain amount of dollars. If you look at the Moral Act, they were supposed to get certain amount of dollars from that. So we have to make sure that we protect them, make sure that they get their dollars, make sure that political leaders who are in office are overlooking these processes so we can make sure that our HBCUs are protected. Because it's just a wonderful feeling to just be among people who look like you, understand your backgrounds. And it's nothing against majority white institutions. We call them PWIs, but we want them to understand that HBCUs were there before integration. and they are a part of American history, and they should be recognized and continue to be recognized.
Right.
All right. Shout out to the HBCUs, and shout out also to Meharry. They gave $10K to their students.
They sure did.
I'm still waiting from $10K from my medical school.
Amazing. Amazing. That was amazing.
That was amazing.
You know, when you talk about the history of HBCUs, and we know about the Flexner report, you know,
Yes.
that came out in 1910 that took away 5 to 6 HBCU medical schools, and it's purported that we would have anywhere between 30 to 50,000 more physicians of color if our HBCU medical schools last. And even the individual Abraham Flexner, who made the report, there was one medical school, HBCU medical school, in his own hometown that he was born in Louisville, that he ended up closing down because of the report.
Wow.
So it's such a travesty when you hear about our HBCUs lacking funding. There's a lack of awareness and insight. And then when we talk about the federal dollars, I mean, the endowment for HBCUs are much, much less in many instances than you have these Harvards that have historically been there as long as a lot of HBCUs.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't get those federal grants, you know, and that's left us in, you know, kind of like in the dust, essentially.
Yeah, well, if you look at it, the people who've run this country, the Chases, the Carnegie Mellons, these people, Vanderbilts, that's right, they all conspired to get together to sort of control healthcare. And the Flexner report, as you mentioned, it closed down a lot of Black schools, medical schools, professional schools, nursing schools, and that directly impacted healthcare disparities amongst our people. And I say our people, and all Americans, you should also understand that Black people are Americans. So we've been hurt. We've been hurt. So right now, again, we're trying to change that. And so places like a Meharry Medical College, a Morehouse, a Howard, and a Drew, we're trying to make sure that we get our doctors in communities so we can take care of people that look like us, but not just on the primary care front, on the subspecialty front. We need cardiologists, we need anesthesiologists, we need surgeons, we need pulmonary doctors, we need hematology, oncology doctors. We need doctors in all aspects so we can make sure that there's a cultural competency and make sure that we are being taken care of properly. And that's important. So definitely, I'm excited to have gone to Meharry. I tell people, Meharry chose me, Xavier chose me. So a lot of us have gone to HBCUs. We have kindred spirits, and nothing against those who've gone to PWIs. I've gone to PWI, University of Tennessee, Baylor College of Medicine. So we accept everyone. That's what I tell people at HBCUs. So we accept support from anyone. And if you want to be a donor of any one of our HBCUs, we welcome that. And you can still come on and support us
at our
homecoming. So we appreciate it, the support that we're getting from everyone.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
As physicians, in my opinion, we are called to be leaders. And I recently, in January, I completed a health policy internship with the Georgia Medical Association. I got the opportunity to watch how bills are crafted, attend various, congressional meetings, and see basically behind the lines of what politics means. And for me, as a future physician, I think that we can impact on a much grander scale if we enter into the political arena. Right now, in the 117th Congress, from which has started from 2021 to 2023, we have about 17 physicians that are currently on the federal level. And speaking to on the state level in Georgia, I believe there's probably, at least what I saw on the congressional side, there's probably 3 or 4. And then on the representative side, there's a little bit more than that. But I wanted to ask you, what are ways in which we can get medical students, physicians, residents to get into this political landscape where we can truly create and cultivate the change that is necessary for our patients in our community?
Absolutely.
And also, just to add to that, why is it that we aren't entering these spaces? I think that's important too. Why are we not entering these spaces?
It's a great question. Looking back at it, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I have been around some great leaders, whether it's at Baylor, Meharry, American College of Physicians. And when I would sit and look at these doctors in leadership positions, I said, man, that doctor right there could be a U.S. House of Representatives. He could be president. He could be a U.S. senator. And it still befuddles me why we aren't going into the political space. For some people, it's fear. They don't want to be exposed to it. Some people, maybe they're just not interested in being in front of the camera. Maybe they're not interested in that aspect of it. But as you said before, we need more. So we need individuals like myself reaching back. We need organizations like the American College of Physicians. We need organizations that are affiliated with pediatrics and family medicine, emergency medicine physicians. They have political action committee arms. So we need to put those bugs in their ears and say, hey, your advocacy organizations need to look at getting more doctors elected. For example, American College of Physicians, we do have a political action committee where we support doctors who are going to run for Congress or U.S. Senate or even president. So we need more of that, and we need to really start that early in medical school. So we need to offer more programs where we can get more doctors involved with advocacy work, coach them up on how to run for office, and even, teach them skills about how to enunciate or do a better job at public speaking. And I say enunciate not in a derogatory way, but public speaking. Sometimes we're in a situation where we may not have the ability to get up in front of an audience and speak impromptu or do speech writing. So those things are important. Your communication skills are important. Have the ability to look beyond the hospital walls, to look beyond the science. Are you able to look at social issues? Are you able to look at the public health issues? So, a degree like a public health degree focused on healthcare administration could be a segue into politics as well. Healthcare administration, or even health law certificates and degrees, teaching about constitutional law. So those are things that we need to work on the medical school level so that we can actually get more leadership skills involved. Putting young people in leadership positions, whether you're running for SGA in college or running for SGA in medical school. So we need those things. So leadership skills, the ability to have great public speaking skills, the ability to look at, again, public health, social determinants of health, looking at economics. That's another one. Some of us, maybe we might not have that skill set of looking at finance or budgeting or economics. Economics is critical, is important, not just for physicians, but anyone else that's looking to go into politics. So we need to have more organizations that are interested and involved in doing that. Student National Medical Association, we need to push that more in that arena as well. So absolutely. So we are definitely must make sure we get more doctors involved, especially since many of us want to help people. And that's what we have to continue to push in politics is help.
I also was a part of SGA in college and in medical school too. So I definitely agree with that. I think too, a part of that is sometimes doctors just want to help people and just focus on being a doctor. But a lot of these things, especially when you have your own practice, these things are affected by politics. You have a lot of people who are not physicians or nurses or in healthcare at all that make these decisions for your business for you because you don't want to get involved and you only want to be taking care of patients. So I think that's very important to understand that.
It is.
Hey, if you want, you got to be the change that you want to see and a lot of time. And so if you want to see it, you got to get out there and push the agenda for people who are going to be affected by the decisions made in Washington, D.C. and stuff like that.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because before I went back and got a physician's executive MBA, like most physicians, we always complain and say, well, why aren't they paying doctors well? Why aren't we able to make decisions? And once you get that education with an executive MBA, you understand about leadership. You understand why the decisions are being made. So you understand why hospital systems may want to hire a nurse practitioner over a physician. It's budgeting. It's budgeting for the position. If you can get someone to do the job for half the price or 3 times less than the price, then you're going to hire them. So it's nothing personal. It's nothing personal. It's business. So when you understand that, you know why hospital systems operate. Just like when you go into here in Atlanta, we have several hospital systems that are operating. And when I came back from business school, I totally understood why they may have their signs in the backyard of one hospital system versus another. They're competing. They're competing in the marketplace. They're competing for doctors. They may have to cut the budget. Maybe in one particular department, maybe their budget was for 10 physicians. Now it's down to maybe 5 doctors, but they still have patients. So they'll hire a nurse practitioner. So it's a business decision. Same thing when people come out and say, well, businesses or corporations need to pay their fair share, or these billionaires need to pay their fair share. Well, guess what? They're playing within the realm of the game or the system of the IRS. It's not their fault that they're not paid the taxes, but we need. And so when you understand that, you don't take it personally against the corporations or the billionaires. You say, okay, how do we fix this? Well, you have to get your political leaders elected. You have to let them, they have to understand business. And when they understand business, they'll push to raise the corporate tax rate, And these corporations are saying, well, look, we need to, hey, we don't want to be taxed. Well, hey, you get with the corporations and say, well, look, what can you do to help communities? Help the people who are supporting your products. Do you want to come in and bring in jobs in our community? we'll give you a tax break if you're looking to do that. Are you looking to
Right.
support organizations or support communities with better healthcare? We'll give you a tax break. So if you were getting a
Right.
tax break at 20%, but we raise it to 40%, you want to get that 20% back? Why don't you put that 20% into a community to help? When we get organizations and people looking to help other people, and you know, it's not their moral responsibility. When we understand that, and it's for them, it's about dollars and cents, making sure that their stock price is better. Hey, let's work together. If we can work together to make this happen, we can reduce crime in communities because young people have job opportunities. Young people can maybe work with programs to help them. We can make things better, but we have to have people on a political level who understand business and who understand what it takes to get corporations to buy in. As of right now, if you look at the budget, Georgia corporations are taxed less. In other words, we get less revenue from corporations than personal taxes. In other words, people pay more personal taxes and we get more revenue from people than we do from corporations. That's wrong. That is 100% wrong. So if you're going into session, your job shouldn't be about X, Y, and Z. Your job should be about, we need to raise corporate tax rates here in Georgia. We need to raise the federal tax rate when the U.S. senators and representatives go in. There should be no ifs and buts about it. That should be their focus. Just like their focus should be on improving healthcare. Their focus should be on jobs. Their focus should be on improving the economy. So all of the other minutia that's there, we shouldn't be even on that stuff. Everybody should be on the same page to try to make society better.
I could talk to you about some of this stuff.
Right. Okay, we can go on and on. On and on.
Right.
Yes.
I love, you know, I'm very interested in hearing these types of these conversations. I like talking about it and discussing these type of conversations, but I understand we're limited on time, so I don't want to go there.
Bring me back. Y'all bring me back.
You and I will definitely connect another time in regards to some of these things, because I really sometimes have a hard time understanding why people think the way that they think and like how decisions are made. And I definitely understand what you said in regards to nothing being personal when it comes to business. You know, I understand that completely. But some of that stuff, gotta admit, the laws allow for hospitals to do certain things where they're replacing all the physicians with an NP or with a PA, and I just think that that's very important to discuss too. Those laws change in favor of some of these corporations, and that's not right as well, because as well as I know that replacement of one job over with somebody who can do the same job might not necessarily be of the same quality or have the same outcome as you would with, I'm just saying, replacing a physician with an NP may not be the best, might not have the best outcome for the patient.
Absolutely.
You know, so that's very important.
Absolutely. It is important.
Right.
What's also really interesting and important is the fact that you are changing the game in the political realm. Talk to us about your podcast, Beyond the Race podcast. I think it's a very unique niche that you're putting yourself into in terms of being transparent and communicating your thoughts about being lieutenant governor and just being real, like addressing issues, whether you talk about critical race theory, you talk about racism, you talk about systemic issues that plague Georgians, Medicare and Medicaid. And I think it's really important because oftentimes I ask people, like, do you even know your political candidates? As much as you go on the Shade Room or you watch LeBron get this $100 million contract, you need to know who's going to be advocating for you and making the decisions that are going to impact you on a day-to-day basis. Yes, know your presidential candidates, but also more even importantly, in my opinion, is knowing your local candidates and what do they represent and how much that they can transfer their thoughts and ideation into what you want to accomplish on a day-to-day basis.
Honestly, the podcast was my idea, and a lot of this, I'm going to be totally honest with you, when you're running for office, you should have consultants, but I made it in a way whereas I actually had control. And a lot of the times, these candidates, they get into office or they get in these campaigns and they have a campaign manager and they have these consultants and they're running the show. So the candidate becomes, lack of a better word, they play a role. I don't want to call them a puppet, but they play a role. So my first campaign, because it was during COVID and just some circumstance, I actually ran the campaign, and so I was a strategist. So I did a lot of work. And I had volunteers. So the second campaign, I had that experience, and then I had more consultants that I worked with. So, but still have an active voice. And at the end of the day, I told my consultants, I said, I sign off on it. If I don't like it, I'm going to veto it. So The podcast was something I came up with because, number one, I love podcasts. Like right now, I love being on the podcast, and I would see other people do them. And I said, man, this is awesome. And I said, well, why not have a podcast during the campaign when people can get to know me, my thoughts, unfiltered. I'm the executive producer of the podcast, so I work with my team. So I'm able to control the content and the topics that we talk about. And they're controversial topics. I mean, we talked about critical race theory. We talked about prison industrial complex. Talk about education. This week coming up, I'm going to talk about economic growth. And then eventually we'll talk about small business ownership. Things that's important that people need to hear. And I tell people, win, lose, or draw, I'm going to stay doing this podcast because I love it. It's important. But people need to really hear from these candidates. And I mean, even for me as a voter as well, when I would go and vote, I would say, okay, who's running for office? Who are these people? I don't know this guy. But now with social media, you have every opportunity to market yourself. And I think it's important to use social media. So we got that podcast going. We've been getting a lot of support, and people are, even Republicans too as well, Republicans, Democrats, they're like, hey, we don't, they have a comment about whatever I said. So I'm able to interact with them. And that's another thing that's I like to do. Same way I interact with my patients. I like to interact with people, whether they agree or disagree with what we're talking about, because you can learn a lot from people who disagree from you. And like I told a friend of mine, this young lady I knew, I said, hey, if everyone thought the same in this world would be a boring place. And believe it or not, you can learn a lot from people who don't agree with the same views from you.
That's facts.
So it's facts, all the way. So this podcast is, for me, it's a great way for me to get out who I am, what I am. And then I'm also going to bring some people on as well, because it'll be a great opportunity to get their opinion about what's going on in this world. So definitely excited about Beyond the Race. And the other question I get is that, where did that title come from? So I tell people, I was talking to an editor. I was looking to put out a book, and this quote just came from me. I said, I want to talk about things that are beyond the race. So the editor said, that's pretty good. And she was like,
that is pretty good.
I said, so that's smooth. I talked to my team, my digital team that I work with, and I had them make sure that it was very similar to the campaign, like Jason for Georgia, same color scheme. But I said, put Beyond the Race with the peach heart and race like we're running. And you can, if you look at it very closely, you can see the wind and everything. So it's pretty neat. And I mean, I love it. I mean, it's great branding, and even the music that we have is pretty neat too. So it's sort of like another way of being creative, and I like being a part of that. So it's fun, and I love it.
Yeah, I actually I was looking on Twitter as well. I saw you had the episode I think it was Twitter. I saw you had the episode for the prison industrial complex. I made sure that I want to watch that one. I want to listen to that one. Sorry, but I definitely want to tune into that one, because that stuff that's pretty heavy. Stuff. And I actually heard
$1 billion industry.
Somebody was talking the other day, and they were talking about like black men gaining life insurance, and how black men gaining life insurance would kind of help with these killings of black men by the police and stuff like that. Because then now and I can't go into it right now.
That's interesting. That's interesting that you're saying that.
Right.
It's interesting you're saying.
You don't have that kind of time.
It's interesting you're saying
it was very interesting when I heard it. I was like, "Oh, it never crossed my mind to think that way." But insurance is hate to pay is essentially
they hate to pay. That's interesting you say that. Well, and that's the other thought that I brought in with the prison industrial complex is that if, just like as physicians, surgeons, we have to have malpractice insurance. So we're careful. We're trying to make sure, but none of the police officers have malpractice insurance. If we treated them the same way we treat the physicians, surgeons, and use a third-party malpractice insurance, guess what? We wouldn't know if police officers are bigot or not, but if they want to keep their job, they're going to make sure they don't do illegal. They make sure they will not do illegal chokeholds. They make sure that they're treating people appropriately, and they'll follow departmental policies. And because no one wants to pay out. And then if you have enough claims made against you, just like a doctor, if you have enough claims against you, whether win, lose, or draw, you won't be able to practice. Well, as a police officer, if you have enough claims against you, you won't be able to work. So that's a critical component.
Exactly. So I that's something that's very interesting. I'll make sure I listen to that podcast. One last question. I know we're running out of time here, but I always like to ask, like a silly, whimsical, whatever, random question, whatever you want to call it. And my question for you today is, if you had to design a spice rack for a blind person, How would you design it?
Ooh,
wow! You came left field with that.
Yeah, it was a big one. How would you design it? I have my hands in any kind of technology that I want.
Anything. You just have you design a spice rack for someone who is blind.
Oh my goodness. Well, definitely I would use the technology we have today. I mean, cell phones, I would definitely have the RF readers on them. Definitely, there would be wireless capability. Definitely would make sure that there's Braille on it. And, you know, if you want to make sure that your food is spiced correctly, I would make sure you have the Creole spicing first. You know, so yeah, I would definitely use Braille,
Right.
definitely use technology and everything. That is an interesting question. Creole seasoning first, a little pepper, a little salt, 2, 3.
And then alphabetize the rest.
Right.
Yeah, I would go 1, 2, 3 with the. I'm from Louisiana, so we have to. Creole seasoning number 1. I would put it number 1 because that's what you know. We have all the herbs and spices. That's standards. That's what would go first, and then I would kind of go on the order of.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate your answer.
Yes, sir.
There's no right or wrong answer.
Hey, Creole
I
seasoning
like to
first.
ask, just a fun question because sometimes these topics get kind of heavy.
Absolutely.
So I just want to, throw that out there.
Oh, I love it.
You're a serious guy, man. I had to ask you a deeper question. I couldn't ask you how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck.
Oh man, woodchuck chuck.
Wow.
That's 10 to the 15th power.
Exactly. Thank you, Dr. Hayes.
This
really
is great.
Appreciated this interview.
Hey, I want to say this.
Before we
go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say before we go, please lay down the law on last words of advice that you want to impart toward the family audience, and as well as how could the people that are listening get in touch with you and learn more about the policies that you want to invoke for our Georgians, and also how could they donate to your campaign?
Absolutely.
And, me and LeVar, pending if everything works out with match and all that, we might be in Georgia.
Absolutely, we
love to help put on for your campaign and support you in any way we can.
Yes, you can text. We have a short code. You can text Dr. Jason, Jason Hayes, Hayes. Text Dr. Jason Hayes to 90678. You will get on the list, and we will SMS broadcast. You're gonna learn about volunteer opportunities. You're going to learn about where Dr. Hayes is going to be for the campaign. We'll even remind you about fundraising deadlines and goals. The website is www.jason, Jason Hayes, Hayes, forga.com. When you go to the website, a link is going to pop up. You can donate there. If you go to the home page, if you go to the upper right corner of the page, there's a donation link. But even on the website itself, you'll see a picture of me. You will see my background. There'll also be links to policies, links to the podcast, links about my background again. You'll also get links to how to contact us as well. You'll also see a podcast sample as well. You'll also see a video sample as well about myself and my background. So that's www.jasonhayes4forga.com. And we appreciate your support. Any amount that you want to donate, whether it's $5, $10, $20 on a recurring basis, or if you have the money, you can donate $250. You can donate $1,000. The maximum is $7,600 for this cycle. And this will help us stay competitive. And when we say competitive, the dollars go to the campaign for marketing, advertising, also to our consultants that they have as well. So we want to be transparent to you where your funding goes. So we appreciate all of you. Thank you for allowing me to be in the campaign. Congratulations to all of you for what you're doing. I do want to know where do you want to, what do you want to practice in? What field, what residency opportunity that you're looking at?
I'm going to be going into neurology/neuropsychiatry, and definitely want to be practicing in the Metro Atlanta area. Hopefully have a clinic one day. And so we'll see, I'll just say the Atlanta area, there's very few neurology residents. There's only one. So y'all know what it is.
Yes. Amazing.
That's number one for me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How about you, Mr. Student Dr. LeVar, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm doing internal medicine.
Perfect.
I want to open up a clinic as well someday.
Amazing.
I just want to do everything. I'm very interested in psych too. So
amazing.
I'll probably end up doing some psych too in an area that doesn't have a psychiatrist.
Amazing. I'm glad that both of you are doing that. We do have disparities in psychiatry and in neurology as well. And hey, whatever I can do to help you, let me know. I have friends that are psychiatrists, neurologists, so whatever I can do to help out. I'm proud of all of what you're doing. I'm proud of the podcast that you're doing. That's an additional skill set that you have. Hopefully you'll still have time to do it in residency, even if it's once a month or once every 2 months or something, because this is great. Podcasts are awesome, especially now with social media, because even, now during residency, I know there needs to be a sounding board for all of you. And I hope you are in some of the young physicians groups that they have on Facebook. You can join. So great opportunity. You can bounce things off. You can bounce things off of me as well, too. So we appreciate what you're doing. And thank you for breaking down barriers and breaking the glass ceiling so we can get more young people, especially young Black people in medicine. So thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for allowing me to come on the show.
Appreciate the kind words, sir.
Thank you.
The honor
you so much.
is ours.
Yes. Thank you. I mean, hey.
So, shout out to you, Dr. Hayes. And before we go, make sure y'all like, subscribe, share love, share love to everybody. Mother, daughter, sister, brother, uncle, attorneys, everything. All right.
At Jason for Georgia, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. At Jason for GA, Twitter. I'm on TikTok as well. At Jason for Georgia. Hey, I'm doing all that stuff.
Right.
All of that stuff.
You know that? Oh, okay. I see you.
Yes, sir.
And make sure y'all donate to our annual podcast scholarship as well. We are giving two $1,000 scholarships to underrepresented minorities in veterinary medicine, occupational therapy, physical therapy, medicine, osteopathic medicine, pharmacy, and the like. So make sure y'all tune in. Link is going to be below, as well as Dr. Hayes, all his information, his website, his IG, all of that. Catch in the show notes. We love y'all. We appreciate y'all, and have a terrific, beautiful day. One love is love. Love is love, baby.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you.